The original rival from the Kanto run of Pokemon games is a no-good fraud, and I've always thought this, but today, I finally have the means to prove it. Normally this would be done by naming him something hilarious and then demolishing his team at every opportunity in a fight, and this is quite fitting given his demeanor as this smug overachiever who's always looking down on you. But today I'm armed with something a little more empirical, in the vein of evidence and cold hard facts. In an amount of time no longer than the length of this video, I will prove that this character, as he appears in Pokemon Red, Blue, Yellow, Fire Red, and Leaf Green, is not only a raging fraud, but perhaps something even more vile and sinister. Our scene today will be aboard the SS Anne, a lovely little cruise ship docked in Vermilion City for a party that both the player and the rival have been invited to. This is a relatively early point in the game, and a major cutoff for a normal playthrough, because you receive the HM cut aboard the ship, and without it you cannot normally access any cities beyond Vermilion or Cerulean to the north, as a cut tree blocks the path to the Rock Tunnel, the next major area of the game. And because of this, your pool of available Pokemon at this point is relatively slim. There's about 20 or so evolutionary lines. The level curve around this point is also in the low 20s, so you probably don't have anything yet that's really that strong or outrageous either. But despite this premise, when you encounter the rival on the ship, after rudely expressing his surprise that you would be invited to the party at all, he makes the outrageous claim that he has already caught 40 Pokemon. 40 whole Pokemon. And to make matters worse, immediately afterwards, he smugly lectures you on where to find more. The nerve of this guy. And you have plenty of encounters with him that are in a similar vein to this one, but this particular meeting has always been a sore spot with me. You can trust that he is promptly dealt with after this rudeness, but that specific number he claims to have caught always stuck with me long after the fight. I was going through my first playthroughs of Leaf Green when I was 10, and at this point I was lucky to have 20 Pokemon caught, if not less. How did he have 40? After you battle him, he mentions that he just got cut, so he couldn't have already visited the areas that require it to get access to. And his highest level Pokemon was 20, so he's probably not over-leveling things to get the entries of their final evolutions either. He definitely seems like the type to bring his best to every battle. This is not a guy who would sandbag. So how did he already have 40? It just felt impossible. Day after day, night after night, I would ponder, where had I gone wrong for him to be this far ahead of me? What was he doing right that I was somehow doing wrong? And so I just kept thinking and thinking about it. The more I did, the more it started to seem like it wasn't possible at all. What if he was lying? Just boasting to make me feel bad? Or even worse, was he somehow cheating or being otherwise dishonest in some way with Pokemon that I didn't even have access to yet? I felt pretty confident that something was fishy here, but I didn't want to make any unfounded or baseless claims. I mean, this guy is the future champion of the Kanto Pokemon League, he's the future Viridian City gym leader, he's a world figure in all these regions, he's a pretty big deal. It'd be wrong to sully his reputation without basis. I also feel that I would probably look pretty foolish if he can legitimately get up to 40 at this point with the team that he has, so we're gonna need to do this by the books. In order to conduct a complete and proper investigation, I've devised a challenge run that would put this question to rest once and for all. The goal of this challenge is simple. Get to 40 Pokemon caught in the Pokédex by the point of the SS Anne encounter with the rival. But we can't approach this like the Professor Oak's challenge type run because of our specific confines. The goal of that challenge is to get as many Pokemon as possible before each gym, but I want to reflect the experience of the rival, so I will be enforcing a level cap of his strongest Pokemon during the SS Anne fight. His level 20 evolved starter. I am using this level cap because there's simply too much evidence in his general behavior and team compositions across the game's story that he would be bringing his best and brightest to every fight. He wouldn't be sandbagging a team and keep over-leveled Pokemon in his PC if they could aid him in victory. And this all reflects here in his level 20 starter being the best Pokemon he has at the fight in question. It's the Pokemon he's been with the longest, and therefore couldn't be counting his final evolution towards his Pokédex. And this would also be the case with any other Pokemon that he has that evolves at a later point, such as his Pidgeotto or Kadabra. And so for all those reasons, I will be enforcing a level cap at 20, so no Pokemon that evolve after that point can be considered in my Pokédex. Other than that, I also want to avoid Pokemon that exist in the story as a one-time event. For our purposes, this mainly means in-game traits, as the trainers that give them to you aren't just dispensers of those Pokemon. They speak like they only have the one that they're giving to you. So if I'm getting that Pokemon, no one else is, namely the rival. He says he's caught Pokemon, and then launches into where to catch Pokemon. So so anything traded should be off the table per his own advice. I will be counting our starters because even though they are technically a one-time event, we both get one, so that's fine. And then finally, no trading with other cartridges. Using his own words, this is a quest about catching Pokemon, not being given them. Alright, so with that set of rules, we should be able to determine not only if him getting his 40 is possible, but also get a pretty good idea of how he did it if it is. I will be specifically conducting this run in Pokemon FireRed. I'm going with the remakes here, mainly for aesthetic purposes, but there are also a few features that will be useful to us that are only present in these versions that are going to be important later. So I'm doing the playthrough in FireRed. So with all the stipulations out of the way, let's head out onto our investigation and truly see once and for all if the rival is full of it.
Ready? Go!
I start my playthrough just like any other. I name myself Drew and then name my rival Chuck. Chuck and I go way back, it's a lifelong feud at this point. For my starter, I end up picking Squirtle and he chooses Bulbasaur. This is usually the part of the explanation where the runner goes into extreme depth about why the starter they chose is uniquely equipped for the run that they're doing, and while I did try to think about that, I don't think any of the 3 Pokemon here have an inherent advantage over one of the others, so I just picked Squirtle because I like it, and I think it's pretty cute. On the other hand, Chuck over here decides to choose Bulbasaur because he thinks he's better than me. What a great guy he is. Chuck immediately decides to get into it with me, and after an easy win for me, he's rude to both me and Bulbasaur. I head out for Viridian City to go get the goods for Professor Oak, and along the way, I make sure to get some levels on Squirtle. He's going to be doing a lot of heavy lifting on the front end of this run, and I'm going to need him in tip-top shape. Afterwards, Professor Oak gives both me and Chuck our almighty Pokédexes, so it's the true start to this run. I'll be taking a running total of the number of dex entries as we go along. No stone will be left unturned, and no Pokemon will be glossed over. This puts our score up to 1, with the dex registering our starters. As we head out for the true beginning to our adventures, Chuck is once again incredibly rude to me, and I silently take note of his poor moral character. Fortunately, the professor was kind enough to give me some Pokeballs on my way out, so I returned to the first route and I bumped my Pokédex up to 3 with Pidgey and Rattata, in addition to getting some more experience on Squirtle. And I'm able to make it to Viridian City proper with a slightly larger team. There's not a ton here, but there is an optional rival fight on the short route to the west, and I prepare to take it on in order to get some more experience and money. I'm going to try and make a conscious effort to get extra money when possible, because I'm probably going to be pressed for it later with the number of Pokeballs I'll need to be buying. While grinding for levels on Squirtle, I'm also able to catch Mankey and Spearow and add them to my crew, making my dex score now 5. Now I figured that I would be good to go for this fight having Squirtle at level 12 versus his Bulbasaur and Pidgey at level 9, but I think I was a bit too overconfident. I'm able to deal with Pidgey, but it does a significant amount of damage to Squirtle, and it's not looking great for the first real rival fight. Squirtle is decent at this point, but I'm getting seriously worried Chuck's gonna take me out going into Bulbasaur. So in a last-ditch effort, and in an almost Avengers-style event, I swap through the 4 Pokemon I've caught up until now, spamming Leer and Growl at Bulbasaur, and then when Squirtle finally comes back in, I'm able to knock out my foe in a single hit. Nice try, Chuck, but you're gonna have to do better than that to beat me. I'm accosted by an old man as I leave the city and then pass through Route 2. There aren't any Pokemon here that I don't already have besides ones easier to get in Viridian Forest, so I just keep walking. After wiping out all the necessary trainers, I round up a Weedle, a Caterpie, and a Pikachu. I'm still mainly relying on Squirtle at this point, but I also start putting some levels into Caterpie because I think that Butterfree with Sleep Powder and Confusion will be a pretty lethal combo later into the playthrough. No evolutions here just yet, so I leave the forest with 8 slots filled in my Pokédex. Squirtle is strong enough now to swap train with Caterpie in the Pewter City Gym, and it's an extremely easy situation with a strong water type. Squirtle easily runs through Brock's rocks, and then both he and Caterpie evolve into Wartortle and Metapod. With the Boulder Badge and a Pokédex now at 10, I grab the running shoes and I move on to the next area. Route 3 is the first location where things can get a tiny bit difficult. The 2 forms of Nidoran can be found here, but both of them act as sort of pseudo-version exclusives to each other. In Fire Red, the male form is relatively common, while the female form is a 1% encounter, the opposite being true for Leaf Green. Even though it's a little bit more complicated than usual, this is still work that I expect the rival to be doing. Anyone taking the Pokédex seriously would probably grind it out, as I have done so here in my run. So while this is an incredibly rare encounter, 1% Pokemon are always fun, I find it incredibly likely that Chuck still caught them both and evolved them if he's able to, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Other than that, pretty standard stuff here. In addition to the 2 Nidos I caught, I also pick up a Jigglypuff, and Metapod evolves into Butterfree. Oh yeah, now we're playing with gas. This takes my journey into Mount Moon, but I need to take a quick pit stop at the Pokemon Center before heading in. Suddenly, I'm approached by a funky dealer who's trying to pawn off a Magikarp on me, but I think it's a pretty good deal given my situation. I know I had a big section at the beginning about one-time only Pokemon and how we're not supposed to get them, and even though you can only get one of these Magikarps, I get the impression that this guy would sell a Magikarp to anyone who walks in here. It's not really a gift Pokemon the way something like your starter is or the Eevee in Celadon City. This guy is going to try to sell Magikarp to anyone who comes within arm's reach of him. And by the time you arrive at this Pokemon Center, he's probably already tried it with your rival. Personally, I think this one could really go either way when it comes to our rival's journey, with him either adamantly rejecting what he views as a scam, or employing some serious business acumen like I've done here and picking up a Pokemon he doesn't have the means to obtain otherwise for only 500 Pokédollars. What a deal. I think I would lean more towards Chuck dismissing this guy as a scammer, but Chuck is going to get one eventually either way, as he has a Gyarados in a much later fight. And not to mention you can get a Magikarp just as easy in Vermilion City before the cutoff. Since this one really goes either way, I'm just going to go ahead and count the Magikarp now so that I can patronize this small business owner. Now that I've got everything taken care of, we can finally head into Mount Moon. This is without a doubt the most important location in the run for multiple reasons, and as such, there is a lot to get done here. Mount Moon is a major cutoff in this playthrough because once you leave the cave and enter Cerulean City, there is no turning back until after the rival encounter we're building to. Once I cross this ledge, any Pokemon that I miss will be forever unobtainable, and I'll forever be in Chuck's shadow. This primarily means that I'm going to be extremely careful. Inside the cave, I run through some more trainers, I pick up a Geodude, a Paris, a Zubat, a Clefairy, and I bump my dex score up to 19. It's not really related to the run, but I love this trainer here at the end of the cave guarding the fossils. I know he's kind of a sniveling punk trying to hoard treasure, and he sucks for that, but I like that his team is all Pokemon that are pretty far forwards from this point in the game. Looking at my Pokédex after the fight and seeing that Coughing is found on an island on the other side of the continent was a real small world moment for me as a kid. It gave me a sense of depth to this adventure I was setting out on. And that's kind of stuck with me to this day. It's always the little things with these games, you know? All that aside, that's the end of the path through Mount Moon, but there is more work to be done here. Mount Moon is also the only place in this run that I'm going to be able to obtain any Moonstones, and I definitely need them to max out my Pokédex. There are only 2 Moonstones actually on the ground that I can pick up here or at any point before our cutoff, but I need 4 if I want the entries for all the Pokemon that evolve with it. Clefairy, Jigglypuff, Nidorino, and Nidorina. This was originally a bit of a puzzle for me, and I couldn't really figure out how to get around this problem. I've got all 4 of the Pokemon, but it seems like I can only evolve 2 of them. After some more digging and research, I eventually came to the solution that had me landing on Fire Red as the game I would try this run in. Because Clefairies in Fire Red and Leaf Green have a 5% chance of holding a Moonstone, and the TM for Thief, an attack that lets you steal the hold item of the opponent, is also in the cave, it's kind of a perfect storm for my problem. Now this does unfortunately mean that I would need to run into a 6% chance of appearance Clefairy, and then catch the 5% chance it was holding a Moonstone on top of that, so it gives me a whopping 0.3% chance of getting my target, twice. But I'm not in the Pokédex game to bellyache, so I slapped Thief on Rattata and got to work. My Rattata bravely thieves against the much stronger Clefairies for what feels like hours, and they in turn spam Sing in an attempt to get him to stop. Yet he persists. After countless trips back and forth to the Pokemon Center to heal my beloved rat, Rattata gets the last Moonstone I need with just a sliver of health left before going down. And that's mainly because he's a brave warrior capable of making the necessary sacrifices. With his incredible work, I'm able to get the Moonstones I need after about 2 hours of grinding, and I leave this Forsaken Cave for good. Now I chose to engage with this Moonstone grind idea simply because it was possible. But it should be noted that it is only possible to do this in the remakes. The rival has the exact same obnoxious quip about having 40 in red, blue, and yellow, but the player only has access to 2 Moonstones before cut in those games, and will be limited to those 2 out of the 4 for the checkpoint. I also think it's extremely unlikely that he put in the work to get the extra stones here. This was an incredibly tedious process that I deep dived for, using the docs to come up with a strategy and then spending the time that I did. Not to mention, Don't you think he would be using them and he would be bragging about it? Maybe Wigglytuff, Clefable, or even Nidoqueen are too girly or some other weird thing for him. But Nidoking? That's right up his alley, 100%. So while I am going to count them towards our eventual total once I evolve the Pokemon because it is technically possible, there are a number of glaring caveats that we will be sorting out once it's time for the closing arguments. Leaving the cave puts me on Route 4. There's not a ton to do here, but I do put Mega Punch on Wartortle just for fun, and I catch an Ekans in the grass. With 20 Pokemon, I'm already halfway there. I spend a bit of time grinding here before moving into Cerulean City because another Chuck fight is just around the corner. Resultantly, La Squadra, that's what I'm calling my team now, easily wipes out Chuck's band of misfits. He claims that I'm always plotting behind him, yet has an unevolved starter and a Pokemon on his team that cannot deal any damage. This is fascinating. The next stop from here is Bill's house on the northern Route 25. This path is essentially a very dense grind fest, but I am able to get some swap training in to level some of my other party members. I'm also able to pick up Oddish and Abra in the riverside patch of grass. I've always liked that Abra is wearing a shirt. It's frankly a great look for it. Oddish is obviously fine, but how is a Pokemon like that possibly going to wear a shirt? Even with this unfortunate design oversight, a Pokemon is a Pokemon, and so my total is pushed up to 22. And finally, after what feels like an army of trainers, I'm able to make it to Bill's house to get the boat ticket. I've always found this to be a very odd scene here with Bill turned into a Clefairy. It's totally plausible to me that this is happening in this world. It's Pokemon after all. This stuff is fantastic and magical. But I guess it's just weird to me that he has access to what is essentially Full Metal Alchemist levels of magic or science or something, and no one is really interested in that or saying anything about it. Just a weird one-off gag, I suppose. Well, thanks anyways for the ticket, Bill. I'm gonna take it immediately south to Vermilion City. The path to get there is no longer blocked off, so I can just head straight for it. And at this point, I don't really need to get the second badge to keep progressing, and I'm just about to have access to the daycare, so I don't really think I'm gonna come back for it. What I am gonna do is drop Magikarp off of the daycare on Route 5 because I'm very tired of swap training him. See you soon, buddy. And then outside, I'm able to catch a Meowth in the grass, bumping my score up to 23. At this point, there are only a few Pokemon left that I can actually catch before starting the big evolution grind. I'm essentially skipping Route 6 because there's nothing here for me right now, and I'm gonna move straight to Route 11 after a quick stop in Vermilion. I'm grabbing the VS Seeker in the Pokemon Center in order to grind experience on trainer rematches, and since this girl is just giving them out, it's an answer to any potential questions about how much money Chuck has or doesn't have at this point. The VS Seeker can act as an engine to get infinite money through infinite rematches, so easy peasy. I also do get the Old Rod, just to say that I have it and can fish up more Magikarp. Not that I really want to, but no stone unturned, you know? Oh, and hey, check out this construction site. I wonder what this guy's building. This finally puts me at the farthest area that I'll have access to on this run with Route 11. It's another sea of trainers that I try to avoid dealing with as much as possible while I pick up a Drowsy. And then Diglett is readily available in the nearby Diglett Cave, aptly named. This is unfortunately another problem area though, for the run. While Dugtrio is technically available here, it's a wild 5% encounter, it appears at a level significantly higher than the level cap, at either 29 or 31. Of course, I caught one. It wasn't too bad now that Butterfree has Sleep Powder. But I must ask again, is this something that we can confidently say that the rival actually has? Looking back on my own experiences, I would frequently use Dugtrio found here to easily steamroll the next few areas. It's about 10 levels higher than the curve at this point, and it can single-handedly get you the third badge at the Electric-type gym. I would say that the Dugtrio here should absolutely be the rival's level cap if he had it. It's an incredible Pokemon at this stage of the game that's really easy to get, and if he was trying to win, he would absolutely be using it. I am going to cautiously count it for now, but there is definitely something fishy going on here either way. With that in the books, we've concluded the actual catching portion of this run with a Pokédex number of 26. That's not actually too far off of 40, and I've still got all those Pokemon in the PC waiting to evolve. Using a combination of the leftover trainers, the tall grass, and the daycare, I take all the Pokemon that can evolve by level 20 up to their necessary levels. Additions here include Raticate, Pidgeotto, Kakuna, Beedrill, Fearow, Nidorino, Nidorina, Kadabra, and finally Gyarados. This large chunk elevates my total up to 35. Because of their level requirements, I will have to exclude Oddish, Zubat, Geodude, Meowth, Ekans, Paris, and Drowsy. And I also don't have a Thunderstone and can't get one, so I'll have to exclude Pikachu as well. Finally, I used the Moonstones that I collected earlier to get Nidoking, Nidoqueen, Wigglytuff, and Clefable. That is everything. That is everything that is possible. I've completed the run, I've caught the most Pokemon possible while following the rules, and I've got a grand total of 39 Pokemon. Not 40. What a fascinating total I find myself at. I'm sure Chuck would find it fascinating too. Just so fascinating. While that does conclude the challenge run section of this event, we have a bit more to discuss in the way of analysis and closing arguments. Before talking about the reasons why my number of 39 should technically be even lower, let's discuss the ways that it could be higher, just to cover all the bases. Obviously, there's a lot of ground to be gained from going over the level cap, but if he's not doing it, then neither am I. The best evidence for this once again is with his starter. At this stage in the game, there is no way for him to get another one. They aren't wild, and breeding isn't possible until the Sevi Islands, so we have clear confirmation that he is not including the final starter evolution in his count because the middle form appears in this fight. And with that starter being his strongest team member here, there's no realistic avenue for him to be hiding overleveled Pokemon when combined with his know-it-all attitude. There are also two in-game trades that we have access to at this point, Mr. Mime and Farfetch'd. Both of these would be valid entries, and I suppose by some definition of the word catch, you could count them. That would be a clean 41, and if Chuck got his total, including those two or some combination of them, I would of course ask him to rephrase himself because he definitely did not catch those Pokemon, but he would have technically met the Pokédex requirement. These trades are one of a kind. They shouldn't be counted as dispensers, so I don't think that they should be counted here. But if you are looking to beat the rival at his own game, adding these two Pokemon would be how you do it. Any of those additions could only be made with the absolute most benefit of the doubt given to an individual who absolutely does not deserve it. So let's now discuss the reasons why that 39 that I got to should be even lower, citing the examples we've gone over up until now. The Pokemon that I counted that I am most confident that he does not currently own right now is Gyarados. He uses one in the fight immediately after this one, and it is within that level cap of 20. I clown him with my own level 20 Gyarados in this very fight. He definitely plans on using it later, yet it is not here right now. There's no excuse for this absence. He doesn't have Gyarados right now. And then there's the Moonstone Pokemon. In red, blue, and yellow, it is simply impossible to have them all, and that's at least 2 Pokemon off the count. And while it is possible to use my gimmick setup in the remakes, the tedium and in-game knowledge required makes it virtually unbelievable that he did this. And finally, there's Dugtrio, a Pokemon that he is either unaware of or is not using for some unbelievable reason. Dugtrio offers an easy-to-access level of strength that any trainer with extra slots in their party would be taking advantage of. There's frankly no excuse. This all put together creates a mountain of evidence against the rival's claim that he has 40 Pokemon. The way I see it, there's virtually no honest way he could have that total by now. He's either telling a bold-faced lie to get back at you for beating up on his pathetic team constantly, or even worse, he has access to features or areas of the game that we don't, all with the audacity to lecture us on how we could catch up to him when it's virtually out of the question. "Oh, just go catch more!" Well, I did, Chuck, and something's not adding up here. The answer to this problem, I fear, is hiding in plain sight. He uses his famous Raticate in this fight, and while Rattata evolves at 20, the one here is at 16. How is this the case? Now, it is a relatively common and unfortunate practice in these games for trainers to occasionally have evolved Pokemon at levels before they're supposed to. Still not cool, but it's a thing that happens. But it especially sucks here, because gym leaders and trainers with pre-evolved Pokemon aren't directly competing with you for Pokédex completion. They don't walk up to you and say, oh, I don't know, something like, "Oh, I've already caught 40! So sure, maybe he has the 40. But to present it in this way where he brags about having at least one, if not more Pokemon, that you cannot have by any means at the level that he has them, is incredible, shocking dishonesty. Maybe he somehow has all the version exclusives we missed. I wasn't able to access Sandshrew or Bellsprout because I was playing on FireRed. It's just another thing though that the player doesn't have access to. I'd say by all accounts we've put together here today, he is at least a fraud, if not a liar or even some form of cheater. He is simply up to no good. His claim that he has 40 Pokemon at this point is entirely unfounded. And even if it is true, he is including Pokemon that the player does not have access to. Without a shadow of a doubt, this claim was made dishonestly at the player's expense. Case closed. Smell you later. With that, we have put a cap on what is clearly one of Pokemon's greatest controversies. I know everyone was losing sleep over this, so we have finally put the question to rest. Thanks a ton if you made it this far. I really hope you enjoyed this one. I don't usually do runs or anything of the like on here, but I thought it would be super fun to do a sort of combination run investigation type thing. And I had a blast doing this, so please let me know if you'd like to see more of this type of video, because I would be thrilled to oblige. Other than that, that's all I got for you folks. I'll see you next time. Droomish out.